Sorry, Miss Khalifa is a little uncomfortable, she has taken time off. After a slight silence, Mr. Bingshan responded unnaturally. He didn't dare to refuse what Miller wanted. This was a character that Marine didn't dare to provoke easily. Not to mention their capital of the Seven Waters. Shall I find someone to invite her over? Bingshan asked cautiously. There is no way, in front of absolute strength, he can only choose to succumb. Ha ha ha, very good, very good. Miller heard the words and nodded like a chicken pecking rice, and immediately went to stroll leisurely. According to the place in his memory, he found Blue Nose Bar, in a very remote alley. Creak. Miller pushed open the door of the bar, and Blue Nose stood beside the bar. After seeing Miller, Blue Nose was also surprised. The first thought in his mind was that the plan was exposed. Spandam issued a secret order from 5 elders yesterday, which was to order CP9 to find an opportunity to kidnap Nico Robin. 5 elders, the leader of the world government, is very concerned about Miller's ability. If Nico Robin is added, if he finds ancient weapon that hides the historical text, the consequences will be disastrous. This combination made the world government feel the crisis. In the previous Alabasta incident, all the signs combined, Crocodile was to discover ancient weapon. Nico Robin is too dangerous. The government gave them a very simple order. Even if they cannot be successfully captured, Nico Robin will be assassinated. It is best to assassinate silently, and don't get involved with the world government. Yo, buddy, bring me a glass of undercover wine. Miller walked in with a grin, looked at the cabinet full of wine bottles and said. Bluno frowned upon hearing this, there is no such wine, and our shop is closed. Bluno didn't dare to turn his face, the 1.8 billion pirate, let alone him, Lu Chi came and didn't look enough. Their mission this time can be said to be extremely dangerous, they can't have a head-on conflict with the enemy, and can only wait silently for the opportunity. I said there is, and I will bring it to the uncle. Miller said coldly. Aren't you an undercover? Isn't the wine you brewed as an undercover wine? When these words fell, the scene fell silent. Sure enough, it was exposed. A look of horror flashed in Bluno's eyes. He asked himself to be honest all these years, leaving no clues. Those people in the city of Seven Waters didn't find any flaws, so how come this guy was exposed? Live to hell. Bluno stared at Miller faintly, and his right hand moved to his back quietly, and the space behind him suddenly felt a mysterious ripple. Immediately afterwards, a circular space portal was quietly opened. Will you run away before the war? CP9 is really a coward. Miller looked at Blue Nose disdainfully, and sarcastically said, in front of me, stop those fancy things. Through observation Hockey's perception, Blue Nose couldn't hide everything from him. Why did you know our identity? Blue Nose lowered his head and his voice was abnormally heavy. I don't just know your identities, you all came from the Pluton design drawings for the hidden Seven Waters, right? Miller said leisurely. Blue Nose was cold all over, he seriously suspected a traitor. Otherwise, how did Miller know this top-secret news? Blue Nose stared straight at Miller, and after a moment of silence, he shouted loudly, shave. The power of the fruit of the door was exposed, and he could only choose other methods. Huh. A gust of wind swept across, and Blue Nose disappeared. Miller stayed for a while, then shook the red wine in the glass and drank it all in one go. He murmured to himself. This big idiot is faster than those with thunder fruit ability and those with flash fruit ability? Blue Nose evacuated quickly, and if there were others, he could still fight back. For Miller, forget it, this guy is too strong. And as we all know, this guy can copy his abilities, and with a single punch, he will let you understand the sinister society. Snap it. The thunder and lightning condensed in the street ahead. Blue Nose stopped immediately, and Miller walked out of the light. He cursed secretly, turned his head and ran. But Miller's speed seemed to move in space, blocking Blue Nose again. Moonwalk. Blue Nose stepped on the air and flew into the sky, and Miller was speechless. How come this kid doesn't know how to fight back? Are you not the fearless CP9? Come down. Miller screamed and pulled his big hand to the sky. Dark fruit was filled with darkness, exuding a strong gravitational force. This was Dark Fruit's ability. The locked Blue Nose suddenly felt heavier and fell weakly towards the ground. Blue Nose hurriedly shouted, Iron Body, boom. He fell heavily in front of Miller, even the floor was smashed, and a big mouthful of blood spurted out of his mouth. Marine 6 styles can't do anything. Blue Nose's face was painful, and the bones he fell were almost falling apart. It looks like you're over here. Miller released a violent thunder and lightning, his piercing eyes were not opened, and Blue Nose felt the breath of death. Without knowing where the strength came from, he quickly got up, reflexively throwing out his fists. He is simply protecting himself. Boom. The fist hit Miller's chest, and he was like a mountain, standing still. There was also a smile at the corner of his mouth. Oops. Realizing that the bad blue no regrets it, isn't this just what Miller wants? 50 million volts. Miller's whole body of lightning was released, swallowing him all at once with his fist. Bluno screamed and drove off, and the high temperature generated by the thunder and lightning burned his clothes on the spot. The whole body was also severely scorched and smoked. He passed out on the spot. The Bluno, who is capable of the fruit of the door, has been captured, and now it is starting to copy 1%, 50%, and 100%. After the copy is completed, congratulations to the host for obtaining the fruit of the door. The sound of the system's machinery resounded through my mind. Miller nodded with satisfaction when he heard the words, and then pointed his big hand to the void with a light tap, and a circular space portal opened. Miller got up and got in. This trick was like a space shuttle, which was extremely convenient. On the other side, the iceberg also made people find Khalifa. In Bingberg's office, Khalifa was strange because there was a large stack of money on Bingberg's desk. What are you doing? Send yourself away. Khalifa, I might need your help with something. Bingberg looked at Khalifa with a look of shame. It's shameful to leave the trouble to a woman to solve it, to be honest. But the iceberg was helpless. This was what the super domineering man requested. It's okay for the president to say it straight, and I must try my best to complete the things I can solve. Khalifa smiled gracefully. Thank you so much. Bingshan breathed a sigh of relief and said bluntly, a group of the Miller pirates is here, you should know it? Understood. The entire island can jump up and down. Khalifa naturally heard about it, even before the icebergs knew it. The replica Miller met with me before, and he made a request. Bingberg gritted his teeth and said, I hope you will accompany Mr. Miller. After it's done, the money will be yours. Accompany. Khalifa was stunned, not realizing what Bingberg wanted to express for a while. If he is inconvenient to say, I'll do it. Suddenly Miller's voice came from the quiet office, and a circular cavity was strangely opened, and Miller came out of it. What a magical ability. Mr. Bingshan's face was incredulous. Khalifa's beautiful face immediately sank. She is too familiar with this ability, isn't it Bluno's? Does this guy copy Bluno's abilities? Khalifa became worried. Although CP9 was said to be a killer organization, everyone grew up together. Their relationship with each other is as close as family. Miller has acquired the ability of Bluno, which shows that there has been a conflict between the two sides. With Bluno's strength, I'm afraid. Go ahead, leave it to me here, Mr. Bingberg. Miller looked at Khalifa's gaze with a sharp glow. The woman was bulging forward and backward, and her appearance was impeccable. She was wearing a hip skirt and gold wire glasses, and she exuded a mature charm. Miller couldn't move his eyes. Then I'll leave. The iceberg passed by Khalifa and whispered, I'm sorry, Khalifa. Khalifa looked at the leaving iceberg, his face getting worse and worse. You seem to be betrayed. What are you wronged? This guy with a stubborn muscle should thank me. Miller curled his lips. CP9 brought trouble to the city of Seven Waters. Bluno was killed by him. Khalifa also planned to take it away. Shouldn't Bingberg be grateful? Miller sat down on the ice, stared at her figure for a moment, and then smiled. Khalifa, you don't speak secretly. I fell in love with you. Miller is very straightforward, and straight to the subject from the beginning. Pirates, this is the nature. If you disagree, grab. Who would spend so much time on a relationship? Those were all foolish behaviors. In contrast, Miller was more willing to go to the bar to spend thousands of dollars and find a few girls to be cool. Khalifa's beautiful eyes flashed with sullenness, but still tried to keep smiling, and said, this is my honor. At this time, it would be silly to not understand what Miller meant. Hey. This smile is too fake, it's uglier than crying. Miller walked up to Khalifa and grabbed the corners of her lips. Come on, give me a smile. Khalifa grudgingly smiled again, still very ugly. It's really disappointing. Miller snorted, sat down on the sofa very bored, and lit a cigar. Since everything is clarified, let's start now. Miller stared at Khalifa just like that, and the latter trembled. She knows that today's level will not be passed. What, you say rejection? Is rejection useful to pirates? Will he obey if he refuses it? And as a member of CP9, Khalifa is an agent. He has experienced any kind of training, and the exercise on this occasion is naturally no exception. She adjusted her breathing quickly, and slowly lifted her hip skirt with both hands. Miller's eyes suddenly narrowed and his breathing became faster. Rumble. The good show hadn't been staged, and there was a loud noise from afar. The sky was clear and dark clouds condensed in an instant, and there was thunder and lightning rolling in the sky. Who doesn't give face so much? The roar of thunder and lightning was so loud that Miller was disturbed, and an anger surged into his heart. He looked out the window and raised his brows. It's Enel again. Enel hovered in the air, surrounded by lightning, and within 100 meters there was an electromagnetic field of lightning. He descended like a thunder god, surrounded by suffocating power. Miller observation hockey is released, and a group of people are fighting Enel. Robin is also there, and the enemy is. It's really surprising. I didn't expect your CP9 to take the initiative to fight with me, so courageous? Miller retracted his eyes and scanned Khalifa, who was already sweating profusely. Sure enough, the identity has been exposed. I don't know what you were talking about. Khalifa didn't smile, still pretending to be a fool. Don't come to this set. Both you and Lu Chi are members of CP9, as well as the abilities I just demonstrated. Don't tell me that you don't know them. Miller waved his hand, and the space opened a door again. Isn't this the ability of your companions? He was beaten so badly by me, ha ha ha. Miller laughed, and Khalifa's smiling face suddenly became cold. Shave. She took the initiative to take the offensive, and immediately rushed to Miller, pierced with lush white jade fingers, finger pistol. The current Khalifa has not eaten devil fruit yet, and he is not afraid of Miller copying it. Pouch. She stabbed Miller in the heart with a shot, but the muscles were as strong as steel plates, and there was no response, but her fingers hurt. Miller did not rush to attack, but waited for the sound of the system quietly. Without devil fruit ability, without hockey, Khalifa failed to capture. A few seconds later, such a voice rang in my mind. My mother, the capture failed. I didn't take it for nothing. It's not good if it's too weak, nothing. The corners of Miller's mouth twitched, and then he looked at Khalifa with a smirk and said, that's right, just use you to compensate me. After speaking, Miller drew his big hand directly to Khalifa's neck. The latter quickly started to retreat. Huh. Miller seemed to have insight in advance, and turned into a flash of light to descend behind Khalifa, and easily locked her neck. With a little effort, he lifted Khalifa up. Asshole, mere pirate, let me go. Khalifa struggled hard, twisting his body, but Miller's big hands were too strong to break free. I'm welcome, thank you for the hospitality. Miller took Khalifa and left. There is no need for Miller to worry about Enel. Lu Chi and Kaku are very strong, but if the opponent is Enel, Lu Chi is really not good. The reason why Enel lost to Luffy, the Straw Hat, was ultimately the restraint in the fruit, and it was somewhat of a plot to kill. If it is replaced by Lu Chi, this disadvantage has disappeared. It should be understood that today's Enel is also a pirate offering a reward of 300 million. These idiots, didn't this uncle tell me to arrest Nico Robin secretly? On the scorched battlefield, Spandam watched from a distance, he didn't dare to come close at all. The thunder and lightning does not have long eyes, and it may come down at any time and blast him to pieces. Nico Robin, I advise you to follow me obediently. In the core area of the battlefield, Lu Chi was scorched all over, staring at Robin and said, this time it is us. Next time, it may be the more powerful CP0. Hearing that, Robin smiled faintly, I want to go with you, but will anyone agree? To be honest, Robin may still be afraid of such threats before, but Miller is not afraid of world government at all. Hey. Monkey, a rubbish, do you dare to threaten this god's little brother? Enel looked down at Lu Chi condescendingly. Every time Miller was not present, he would crown himself king. The golden stick in his hand pointed to Lu Chi and sneered, become a roasted leopard, scum. 60 million volts thunder dragon. Lightning surrounds the golden rod and exhales directly after a little brewing. The lightning speed was so fast that most people couldn't avoid it. When Lu Chi realized it, the lightning had swallowed his whole body. Rumble. Ultimate bright thunder and lightning exploded on Lu Chi's body, and the spreading shockwave directly flew Kaku, Jabra and others on the side. Puff. Lu Chi was so burnt that he collapsed into the ground unconsciously. There is still a breath. Relying on observation hockey's perception, Enel clearly felt Lu Chi's heartbeat, and that face was immediately full of chill. It's blasphemy to survive God's tricks. Slap. Thunder and lightning gushed out of Enel again, and the golden rod aimed at Lu Chi again. Kaku and Jabra are both extremely panicked. Lu Chi is their backbone. If he dies, CP9 will be gone. Tempest kick. Kaku kicked the sky several times, and several silver rays of light flew into the sky. Enel snapped his fingers with a snap, and the dark clouds that had piled up in the sky immediately brought down thunder and lightning. Boom! The crescent-shaped kick was hit by lightning and exploded in midair. During this time, Jabra retreated with Lucky. Kaku also took the opportunity to disappear. The entire capital of the Seven Waters is ours. I want to play the game of cat and mouse? I can do it for you. Enel's jealous voice resounded across the world, and no one on this island could cure him except Miller. On Miller's side, he also finished quickly. Recently, my physical strength has dropped. It is necessary to take some good supplements. Miller came out of the bedroom. He rubbed his head dizzy. He glanced at the time, and only 1 hour passed. Usually, he is about 2 hours. Khalifa was lying on the sofa with a dead heart, and she stared at the ceiling blankly, like a walking dead. Don't look like this, Khalifa. Be a pirate with me from now on. How nice it is to be free. Miller lit his cigar. I can take you to every corner of the ocean. Being a pirate? Never possible. Khalifa's pretty face returned to apathy. Just now, I was bitten by a dog. What? Miller heard this and paused for a few seconds on Khalifa, before showing a mean smile. Then, can I come up now and bite you again? Khalifa's forehead swelled with blue veins. She was helpless with such a guy. How could she be like a pirate offering a reward of 1.8 billion? Can 1.8 billion pirates say such shameless words? Remember it for me. I won't take refuge in your pirates when I die. I am a member of the world government. Khalifa said stubbornly, as if he had been brainwashed, with a decisive attitude. Don't think the world government is too good. Miller spit out the smoke ring and said faintly, when you are useless, you will naturally be abandoned. If it's provocative, your methods are too ridiculous, Khalifa mocked. Miller laughed but didn't say anything, and didn't bother to argue about anything. After CP9 lost to Straw Hat Luffy, he was wanted by the world government. And throw all the black pot on CP9's body, boom boom boom. Master Miller, I have something important to discuss with you. Outside the door came the knock of Iceberg, which sounded very anxious. Enel hunted down the members of his company Lu Chi and Kaku in the city of Seven Waters. Really, come in. Miller sighed. He wanted to sleep with Khalifa. Bingberg directly slammed the door open. He looked at Miller and pleaded bitterly. Your subordinates are chasing Lu Chi and Kaku. They are all my subordinates. I hope you will stop them. Luck and Kaku were also hunted down. Khalifa was desperate when he heard this. If even Miller's men could not handle it, let alone Miller. The gap between them is too big. Why would 5 elders send them such a damn task? We should let Marine Admiral take the lead. Why stop it? Miller picked up the coffee on the table and took a sip. Bingberg, Enel is helping you out. I do not know what you mean. Bingshan's face was sullen, and the entire Seven Waters city was stunned, or would he help him solve his troubles? What a joke. Lucky and Kaku, and Miller pointed to Khalifa, who immediately lowered his head. They are all CP9s of the world government. They dived into the capital of Seven Waters only for the Pluton design. Enel helped you fix these people, not what it is to help you solve the trouble. When these words fell, Bingshan's mouth was open and he could squeeze a fist. The shipbuilders who have worked under him for several years are all CP9. To the Iceberg, it is nothing short of shocking and ridiculous. He looked at Khalifa, who played the role of the perfect secretary for the past few years. It would be terrible if it was pretended to be. You have evidence? After calming down, Bingberg still didn't believe it. If you count on evidence for everything, the prisoner will have run away long ago. You can see their skills. They are almost the same trick, that is Marine 6 styles, where normal people learn this. Obviously they have been trained in an organized way. Miller approached Khalifa and asked in a faint mosquito voice, I'm right, Khalifa. It's also very lively here. At the same time, Robin also came, followed by Bartolomeo and others. They also escorted a person Spandam. The strength of the 5 scums was too weak and was captured alive. Forgive me. After seeing Miller, Spandam froze with fright. A smell of urine also escaped from this guy. Why did the world government choose such an idiot as its chief? Everyone is full of disdain for Spandam. Even Khalifa's subordinates don't look down on Spandam. What a shame. However, Ishan thought about the alive Spandam, regardless of other people's eyes. He knelt and crawled in front of Miller, kowtowing his head. Master Miller, it's none of my business, it's all orders from the world government 5 elders. They asked CP9 to arrest Nico Robin, and I was also forced to help. Spandam's servant revealed everything, and even the torture didn't need to be interrogated. Facts have also proved that no matter how wise and martial, big people have time to be clumsy. 5 elders. Miller's eyes flickered open, and Mr. Bingberg on the side was also cold, staggering and almost falling over. Are you really CP9? Mr. Bingshan looked at Khalifa with a trembling gaze, while the latter looked at him with his head up and chest up. You want to kill, feel free. These words can be regarded as a default. Mr. Bingshan heard the words as if he had been punched and fell directly on the wall. He clenched his fist tightly, sweating profusely. Once upon a time, he deliberately cultivated Lu Qi and Kaku as successors. They are all excellent shipbuilders and can support Carrera in the future. But the truth was too slapped. Bingshan's face was so hot and painful, it seemed that someone had taken a few big mouths. Let me go, Master Miller, I'm just an insignificant little person. Spandam hugged Miller's thigh and begged for mercy. Trash. You actually bowed to the enemy, and the government's face was lost by you. Khalifa scolded angrily, but Spandam didn't care. He is a very realistic person. If he can survive, what kind of dignity is he? Bluebrew. At this moment, the phone worm on Spandam rang, and he took it out to take a look. His cheeks were strained. The jet black phone worm. Catch. Miller clearly saw the fear and panic in Spandam's eyes. This is from 5 elders. Spandam said weakly. 80% asked Nico Robin what's going on here. When the voice fell, the entire office was completely silent, including Miller's breath. He has met Marine Admiral, and the world's highest authority, 5 elders, has never met. But what? Miller grabbed the phone worm and directly pressed the answer button. Spandam, how is the mission accomplished? A very majestic voice rang across the phone worm. Is it because you old dogs who never die let CP9 catch my woman? Miller cursed directly, and Spandam on the side was frightened and his legs weakened. That was the man in power of the world government, and even Marshal Marine would have to bow to his knees. Are you Miller the duplicator? 5 elders on the opposite side of the phone worm guessed Miller's identity after a little thought. It seems that Spandam has failed. Of course, you guys are expecting this kind of stuff to steal Robin. Do you have water in your head? Don't talk about me. Even my subordinates can't beat CP9. Let me wait for the world government. Another day, my uncle will surely make you pay a heavy price. Even in the face of 5 elders, Miller is still rampant and domineering. At this moment, several 5 elders of Marie Joy's are all very angry. How can anyone dare to talk to them with this attitude? But if the target is Miller, they really have to consider the threat of the other party. Because this guy is not a messy character in itself, even to some extent, it is more difficult than the 4 emperors. The whole world knows that Miller can replicate Devil Fruit's abilities, including hockey. The pirates or marines who have fought with him almost all have their abilities taken away. If you really go crazy one day, it can indeed cause trouble to the world government. We can talk in detail. The simple words of 5 elders broke everyone's 3 views, including Khalifa and Spandam. Nico Robin also cast an incredible look. To put it bluntly, isn't the so-called talk a confession? Talk about it. Hearing this, Miller was also stunned, and he didn't expect 5 elders to admit it at this time. World government has always been lawless, so who has it cared about? What Miller didn't actually know was that 5 elders also wanted to send multiple top combat powers to annihilate Miller, but then Sengoku came forward to stop it. You guys don't want to see Sakazuki, Paluzalino, Kuzan, and Garp's hockey appear on that guy at the same time, right? It was such a simple sentence that dispelled their idea of destroying Miller. I'll grab your wife, hang it up, tortured and humiliated, are you willing? Miller asked sharply. The temperature of the entire room suddenly dropped to freezing point. Presumptuous. Pay attention to your tone of voice. Don't think that you can shake the world government if you control the power of crooked doors and evil ways. Standing in the world for 800 years, do you know how much territory we control? Mortal, do you want to contend with God? Miller's words deeply angered 5 elders on the opposite side of the phone worm. Really? Miller dug out his ears impatiently and looked at everyone speechlessly and said, these old guys are too good to talk. Their mouths are like machine guns, and they talked a lot. The old man is really the most verbose. Nico Robin and others. Then go to war. Miller said a few words lightly. When Straw Hat Crew rescued Robin, he was not afraid of the world government, let alone the current Miller. Are you serious? The voice of 5 elders on the opposite side was a little choked, seemingly shocked. Because no pirates have been so rampant, No one dares to use the word war on the head of the world government. Do you think Laozi is teasing you? Miller sneered, and said with evil interest. Of course, if you send your wife over and let me beat me up, then I don't mind canceling the declaration of war. Otherwise, give me a good tremor, haha. After Miller finished speaking, he hung up on the phone worm. Anyone who knew something about world government knew how crazy Miller was. The most complicated of these is undoubtedly Robin. She also did not expect that this incident would cause a war with the world government. The boss is so cool. Bartolomeo, a brain-dead fan, danced in excitement. What world government 5 elders, you want to step on them all. Ha ha ha, you were right. Miller also grinned and didn't care about the consequences of this incident. By the way, find Enel for me, I have something to tell him to do. Miller intends to give the world government a start. Holy Land Marie joys. Too rampant, what capital does that guy have to fight us? In the bright and spacious hall, several old men in suits were full of anger. After so many years, few people have dared to provoke the world government in this way. Notify Marine, sanction that guy immediately. It is estimated that Sengoku refused to perform the task. HMPH, he is not qualified to refuse, we have to say it. There is a new round of rewards to increase. The 5 elders talked endlessly. There are roughly 2 aspects. One is to arrest Miller, and the other is to increase his reward. But embarrassingly, they did not find a suitable candidate. In the task of arresting Miller, Marine has always been passive and has little interest. Because in Sengoku's view, arresting Miller was to give the guy warmth, and Miller couldn't ask for it. Brew. The phone worm on the table rang suddenly, and several 5 elders stopped talking. The blonde 5 elders answered the phone worm. Rumble. Before he spoke, the phone worm heard an earth-shattering explosion, which was very ear-piercing. The pupils of several 5 elders were wide. Several adults, Eni's lobby was attacked by Enel, please support. There was a helpless voice from the other side, all the members of the Miller Pirates attacked Eni's lobby. What? The 5 elders were all shocked. They hadn't had time to defeat Miller. This bastard started to retaliate. And still Eni's lobby. Booming. There was another blast of earth-shattering noise, and there was only an explosion on the opposite side of the phone worm, and the previous sound had disappeared. 5 elders is not stupid, probably already killed. As for Eni's lobby, the sky within 10 kilometers is full of dark clouds, and thousands of lightning in the clouds are collapsing. Enel is like a god, he is in the form of thunder and lightning, suspended in the sky. A lot of lightning fell on Eni's lobby, marine and government officials wailed again and again, and countless buildings were destroyed. Disappear, Lei Ying. Enel looked at the island below, pointed the golden stick at the sky, and the dark clouds all over the sky disappeared. Ming Mei did not appear, and a super-large lightning sphere slowly fell. In addition to Thor mode, this trick, Lei Ying, is Enel's strongest trick. It is so powerful that it can blow up an island easily and simply. Of course, this was also what Miller requested. 5 elders angered Miller, and he decided to sink Eni's lobby first. Miller himself did not move out, it was Enel, Bartolomeo and others who did it. Rumble. The ball of thunder and lightning fell on Eni's lobby, and the entire island suddenly began to shake violently. Lightning scattered like a violent wind. The entire land of Eni's lobby was swallowed, and the ground was torn apart. In the center, a deep hole with a radius of more than 1 kilometer was blasted out by a thunderball. Boom. Finally, with a dull loud noise, the island that had stood for hundreds of years exploded. Countless grains of sand are flying in the air and drifting into the distance. Eni's lobby disappeared without a trace. After only half an hour, Marine's battleship came to check the situation. Miller of Damn It. On Wang Yang, Marine's several warships gathered together, and standing on the front side of the deck was a burly man. There is a small sakura flower tattoo on the face, head and chest with Chinese characters. Wearing a straight red suit, he is more than 3 meters tall. Guru. After seeing this man, the surrounding Marines didn't dare to approach at all, and they couldn't breathe easily. Sakazuki Admiral, the enemy has left. The adjutant came up cautiously and asked, "What shall we do next?" Chasing. Akainu spit out 2 words coldly, and the adjutant was embarrassed. The order Sengoku gave was to try to avoid friction with Miller. Sakazuki, are you going to violate Marshal Sengoku's military order? A lazy voice came from the other side, and Kizaru's servant also came, with a cigarette in his mouth, looking out to the sea in the distance. Trouble finding that guy, your fruit and hockey will be copied too, so bear with me. Kizaru persuaded. The old man is an example. Kizaru's grievances on his face made him feel sad when he thought about it. Miller relied on his ability to behave in the ocean. Not only pirates, even marine has been taken care of by Shining Fruit. Couldn't that guy be allowed to be lawless? Akainu snorted coldly, not to mention that this is an order from 5 elders. Kizaru took a deep look at Akainu. Sakazuki, I don't think your relationship is so wide, and the relationship can be extended to 5 elders. When will I help? The old man also recommend it. Akainu's face froze, but did not answer. Marine has other big things right now, you should know it. Kizaru Yo-Yo said. Has Marshal Sengoku really decided to go to war with them? Akainu squeezed his sweat, and his open fist was firmly held again. The ferocious eyes were full of excitement. If executed in public, the Whitebeard pirates will definitely not give up. Naval headquarters will inevitably stage a battle. Old God Kizaru was analyzing and saying, at this time, it's really not easy to find and provoke others. Then let them go. Akainu's anger was cut by more than half. Looking at the wreckage of the island floating in the sea, wait for the old man, the Miller pirate group. An hour later, Enel and others took the Ark Proverbs back to the city of 7 Waters. Eni's lobby was blown up. This incident shocked the world, and Miller once again became a man of the sea. And his bounty has increased again. The original 1.8 billion Baileys increased to 2 billion Baileys. Enel has also increased to 500 million Baileys. Bartolomeo rose to 220 trillion Baileys. As for Robin, he also offered a reward of 200 million. I'm so wronged, I obviously didn't do anything. Robin couldn't laugh or cry after seeing the reward. After careful calculation, the reward offered by them has almost reached 3 billion Baileys. This is an extremely terrifying number, perhaps not worth mentioning in comparison with the 4 Emperors group, because of 4 Emperors is more than 3 billion Baileys, not to mention most of the subordinates. However, it has been less than 2 months since Miller established the pirate group. Such a short time has formed a pirate group of 3 billion Baileys, which is absolutely unprecedented. Creating a panic-stricken event, Miller will inevitably fire on the sea for a few days. But with the announcement of another incident, Miller's popularity soon expired. The newspaper published a super news that could shake the world. In the garden of a villa in the city of 7 Waters, Miller and his gang were celebrating with a party, but it didn't take long before Bartolomeo ran over with a newspaper. My God, the 2nd Division captain of the Whitebeard Pirates Firefist Ace, was arrested by Marine? Marshal D. Teach will replace Crocodile as the new Shichibukai? Robin looked at the contents of the newspaper in disbelief and couldn't help taking a deep breath. Marine, is this crazy? The whole world knows the consequences of capturing the captain of the Whitebeard Pirates. Marine didn't catch the people, but Blackbeard should have caught them. A few days ago, I heard that guy was chased by Firefist Ace, but unfortunately he was not an opponent at all. Blackbeard gave Ace to Marine. He got the position of Shichibukai and used Marine's power to defeat the Whitebeard Pirates. It's so calculating. Miller admires Blackbeard's strategy a little. Is the biggest winner in the top war Marine? Not really. Blackbeard was the real winner. Not only did he get the coveted shock fruit, he also recruited impelled down prisoners as his companions, and even snatched the position of Whitebeard's 4 emperors. Take a huge advantage. But if there is a real war, it will be of great benefit to me. Miller's eyes were shining, and when he was on top of the war, he gathered a lot of fruit abilities. Pirates, Shichibukai, and Marine are simply a paradise for the strong. There are countless people with powerful fruit abilities. Whitebeard, Marco, Diamond JOZ, and others, there are too many capable people. Master Miller intends to join in this war. Robin cast a surprised look and asked, where are we standing? I don't stand on either side. I only hunt for demon fruit power. Both Whitebeard's shock fruit or Marine's abilities are my goals for copying. Miller didn't intend to join any camp. Save Ace? He is not interested in this. Early tomorrow morning, let's leave the city of 7 Waters. Miller stretched, and the repair of the Ark's Proverbs was over. In addition, Bingberg also ordered people to help build 5 battleships, which will follow Miller by then. In the Battle of Eni's lobby, Miller's pirate group expanded a lot. One of them also joined in. Frankie, are you planning to leave with Miller? In Bingshan's office, he looked at this old friend complicatedly, his eyes falling into deep memories. He used to be Tom's disciple with Frankie, and the two had a happy time in the past. But because Tom helped One Piece Roger build the battleship, he was persecuted by the world government later. Both of them were disgusted by the world government. Miller defeated CP9 this time and destroyed Eni's lobby. Frankie felt very happy. The battleships Miller needed were built by Frankie. The world government has been coveting the Pluton design. As long as I leave the capital of the Seven Waters, you will feel at ease. Frankie resolutely said. I have also inquired clearly, Lord Miller needs a shipbuilder. Bingberg sighed. Now that Frankie has decided, he has nothing to interfere. For Miller, Bingberg is also grateful. If it weren't for him to annihilate CP9, he might stab him in the future. The next morning, Miller and his party set off. Miller was surprised when he heard that Frankie was also going to follow. Owen seems to have taken away the crew of that King Luffy again. Robin is also one of them. At the moment when the pirate group is expanding, Miller will naturally not refuse Frankie. Besides, this guy is also useful to board the ship, and the ship repair will be left to him in the future. In addition to Frankie, another person was also taken on board Khalifa. On the blue sky, a huge spaceship flew by. In the waters below, several battleships of the Miller pirate group surmounted Wang Yang. The Ark's proverbs flew over the middle of the clouds, and Khalifa stood on the deck, looking at the disappearing capital of the Seven Waters. A touch of desolation could not help but rise in his heart. In the future, she might also survive as a pirate. Holy Land Marie joys. There is still some benefit to bowing down, and Spandam finally left alive. You idiots still have the face to come back. In the spacious and bright room, Spandam knelt on the ground, and 5 elders looked at him coldly. Eni's lobby was sunk, and Miller and his gang were at large. It was a great shame. 5 elders looked at Spandam. Why didn't this guy die? 5 adults, this has nothing to do with me. Spandam burst into tears and explained. It's all CP9 disobedience. They refused to obey my orders. The guy Lu Chi was too impulsive. He could clearly catch Nico Robin secretly, but because of his arrogance, we in the Miller pirate group had a head-on conflict, and the plan failed. Spandam was so shameless that he dumped all the pot to CP9. In fact, this guy is eager to urge CP9 to arrest Robin. If not, Lu Chi and others plan to stay lurking for a while. Eni's lobby was destroyed, and the government's face was discredited. Someone must stand up and take responsibility for this matter. 5 elders, a bald head holding a sword, said coldly. The others also nodded. It is inevitable to find a scapegoat. Boom. Spandam's head hit the ground directly, and he didn't even dare to gasp. Correct. A bright light flew in Spandam's mind and quickly said, several adults, Miller recognized us in advance. I suspect that CP9 is undercover. He paused and continued. Khalifa followed Miller away, and there must be some secrets in it. As a government spy, Khalifa controls too many secrets. If he turns to Miller, the consequences will be disastrous. The blonde 5 elders examined Spandam for a moment, then closed his eyes. CP9 doesn't do things well, and absconds in fear of crime. Let Marine launch a wanted on them immediately. After these words fell, Spandam breathed a sigh of relief. My little fate was finally saved. As for CP9, I can only say sorry. The news that Fire Fist Ace was caught swept the world. The New World and the first half of the Grand Line, as well as everywhere in the world, are full of trouble. Aye. Ace was caught. On a certain island on the Grand Line, a teenager wearing a straw hat looked at the latest newspaper, and his whole person was petrified. Luffy, do you think that Ace? The young man with a green algae head looked at him strangely. No, the other party is a pirate offering a reward of 550 million Baileys. The young man in a black suit shook his head, still the pirate of the Whitebeard Pirates. The Whitebeard Pirate Group is a world-renowned super pirate group. Luffy seemed to have heard nothing, staring at the newspaper blankly. Luffy, you shouldn't have burnt your head. The beautiful girl touched Luffy's head. The temperature was normal. Ace him, ace him, ace. Luffy couldn't help but burst into tears. He's my brother, eh? Luffy cried bitterly, and the rest of the people were dumbfounded. Everyone looked at each other, looking at Ace in the newspaper, and then at Luffy. They were totally different. No, I'm going to save Ace. Luffy quickly cheered up and wiped away the tears on his face. No matter who it is, I will never allow him to hurt Ace. Are you crazy? Nami was the first to oppose, pointing to the content of the newspaper and saying, Ace is locked in that impel down. There are too many pirates offering a reward of over 100 million. We go to die. I must rescue Ace. Luffy couldn't listen to advice at all. Zoro and Sanji were silent. They weren't as impulsive as Luffy, they still had brains. At least understand that attacking Impel Down with their strength is to give away the head. But that was Luffy's elder brother after all, and it is understandable that Luffy, as his younger brother, saved people. I object too. Another long-nosed man walked out of the cabin and said in a panic, Luffy, that's Impel Down, the pirate's grave. Almost no one has escaped from there. Are you going to take everyone to death? Usopp questioned. He, like Nami, belongs to the timid category. Luffy's ideas are the kind that is unachievable, and they may take everyone's lives at any time. Zoro, Sanji, you two persuade Luffy. Nami walked over and tugged at the corner of Sanji's clothes. Ms. Nami, although the strength is not as good, it is a matter of course to save people, and I can't speak. Sanji took a mouthful of cigarettes and said slowly, I'm sorry. Anyway, Luffy is the captain. Now that he has the idea of saving people, he must execute it as a crew member. Zoro's eyes were sharp. Not only on the side of the Straw Hat Pirates group, but waves were actually caused everywhere in the sea. After the Whitebeard pirates of New World received the news, they immediately took harsh measures and sank all the marine warships that monitored them. It even destroyed several marine bases with it, and the response methods were very fierce. On the sea, every individual can smell the atmosphere of war. The battle between naval headquarters and 4 emperors is about to start. Marine is also shrinking its forces around the world. Elite personnel from each marine base are sent to naval headquarters. Not only that, with regard to Shichibukai, Marine also issued an order to convene. A tragic battle is about to start, an island on the Grand Line. Many warships were gathered on the sea nearby, and the entire island was bombarded indiscriminately. In the towns trampled by artillery fire, houses collapsed, and a group of people hid in the basement, roaring nonstop outside. They are members of CP9. Lu Chi and the others plan to go to Marine Base to cultivate, but the group of guys turned their faces directly and threatened that CP9 was a traitor to the government and wanted to capture them. This makes CP9 members extremely angry. Over the years, they have done too much dirty work for the world government. Now that he has turned into a traitor, isn't it ridiculous? Lu Chi. What should I do? Kaku and others looked at Lu Chi, who was silent on the wall, and asked him what he meant. It used to be Lu Chi's sole discretion, and it still is. I guess it's the bastard Spandam. A cold light flashed in Lu Chi's eyes. When Marine gets closer, kill them all. Since Marine and the world government have turned their faces, he will not show mercy either. First find a safe place to recuperate, and then find the guy Spandam to settle the ledger. Lu Chi clenched his fist. They were all 9 dead in the first battle of the City of 7 Waters. Although one by one escaped, all the members were injured, even he himself was no exception. The top priority is to find a quiet place to recuperate. At the same time, in another place on the sea, Miller also set foot in an unfamiliar sea. The sea here is like a deserted place in the world. It is dark, and the water flowing in the sea is even black. Occasionally a few ghost ships passed by on Wang Yang, with skeletons piled up on them. The waves on the sea rolled, and the sea hit the ship like a beast. Strangely, there was no movement. In this depressed sea, everything seems to be dead. I don't know how long it has passed. There was a sudden movement in the sky, and I saw a spaceship passing by the dark clouds. It was the Ark's motto that after the warship was built, Miller drove all his men down. Now the Ark proverbs are all Miller's women. This is his paradise alone. Brew. In the cabin, the phone worm on the table rang and kept ringing. Miller rushed out of the women's pile, pressing the answer button with extreme fatigue. What's up? He asked with a yawn. A night of absurdity. Even the Iron Man would feel tired. Boss, we found Marine's battleship. The guy Enel sank the opponent and caught a few lives. We got some useful news from Marine. This is the Devil's Sea. Bartolomeo explained on the phone worm. That's it, it seems to have arrived at Gecko Moria's site. Miller looked out the window subconsciously, about to hang up the phone bug, and suddenly asked, speaking of which, why did Marine come to Gecko Moria? Marine summoned Shichibukai and asked Moria to go there, probably to deal with the Whitebeard pirates. Bartolomeo said, this is also the answer to the torture. That guy Moria has a big face, he can't call or invite him, he has to be answered. Miller responded with a grunt, and immediately hung up the phone worm. What shall we do next? Robin hugged Miller from behind, disheveled. It's all here, let's go to Moria's site to be a guest. His subordinates and Moria herself are capable. Miller's face is greedy. He has collected too many devil fruits recently, but, in this respect, he is like a hungry idiot. Every time he encounters demon fruit power, he can arouse his hunting desire. In the deepest part of the Devil's Sea, there is a huge sailing boat slowly moving, with castle mountains on it, and even large forests and graves. Speaking of a boat, it is actually like a moving island, and in terms of area, it is even much larger than an ordinary island. This is the nest of Gecko Moria, one of 7 warlords of the sea. After his horrific defeat at Kaido that year, he teamed up with the genius Dr. Hogback, and the two plunged into the Devil's Waters together. After these years, Moria did not give up looking for a way to defeat Kaido. In the castle on the Thriller bark, Moria and his little brothers are having a simple meeting. Perona, Absalom, and Hogback, these are the core cadres of Moria, known as the Three Weirds. Perona is a ghost fruit-capable person. Absalom is a transparent fruit-capable person. Gecko Moria is a shadow fruit ability person. With so many outstanding abilities gathered, Miller will naturally come to pay a visit. Shadow. I need the strongest shadow. Without a suitable shadow, the Demon Oz can't exert a powerful combat power at all. Moria grumbled. His shadow fruit can cut out the shadows of others and put the shadows into the corpse. Then the dead person will be resurrected. He tried to defeat Kaido in this way. Moria wanted to find the shadow of a strong man and stuff it into Oz, who was the Demon Oz who shocked the world hundreds of years ago. Once recovered, his fighting power would be amazing. But it's pretty weird to say, Moria organized a huge zombie army, and Kaido, his enemy, formed a man-made demon fruit power army. Master Moria, there are already few people coming to the Devil's Sea, let alone the strong. Perona sighed, you have to wait for your goal to be achieved. Wait. Moria glanced at Perona with dissatisfaction. I have waited for 10 or 20 years, how can I wait? When Kaido is dead, shall I take revenge? There's no way. If you just find a shadow and stuff it into Oz's body, even if he is resurrected, his combat power will be poor and pitiful. Hakuback spread his hands and expressed helplessness. Moria's eyes flickered, it seems that I can only leave the Devil's Sea temporarily. Rumble. At this moment, thunder and lightning flashed over the Thriller bark, unprecedented thunder and lightning condensed, and the dark night sky was illuminated. The zombies on the ship seemed to be terrified of thunder and lightning, and went directly to the depths of the earth. Moria's head also peeked out of the window, and he looked at the dark sky. At the center of the thunder and lightning, there seemed to be something floating. That's a flying ship. In the end, Moria's sight penetrated through the thunder and lightning, and saw the ark's proverbs hovering in the sky. Bang bang bang. At the same time, the Thriller bark suddenly trembled a few times, as if it were an earthquake. In the outlying area, several warships of the Miller pirates directly hit the Thriller bark. Rumble. Immediately afterwards, the void dropped a wide range of thunder and lightning, bombarding Thriller bark indiscriminately. A look menacing. There is no doubt that it was Enel et al. His men were fierce as a tiger, but Captain Miller was much more low-key, and the ark's motto came slowly and peacefully. My God, that's a spaceship. Moria's men also found the spaceship floating in the sky, and their eyes widened in surprise. To be honest, it was the first time they saw a warship flying in the sky, and it was inevitable that they would be curious, how did such a big spaceship fly? But the boss Moria has a look of bad luck. The owner of this spacecraft has done a lot of vigorous things on the sea in recent days. The Eni's lobby was sunk, and this incident caused a stir in the whole world. Miller was on fire again. Buzzing, there was a ripple in the space inside the castle, and a circular portal was strangely opened. What is this? The three weirdos all had their heads stunned, and they didn't know what was going on. Even Gecko Moria doesn't know what this ability is for the time being. This is the fruit of the door. Miller's voice came from the circular space, and he walked out in a hug. Holding Khalifa on the left, Robin on the right. What are you doing here? The moment Miller appeared, Moria was not surprised. It's okay, it just happened to be in the Devil's Sea. Everyone is a pirate, just drop by. Miller sat directly on the sofa as if he had arrived at his own house. His eyes were fixed on Absalom, Perona, and Gecko Moria. It's actually that Mimi. Miller. In the recent ocean, Miller was so famous that the three monsters recognized him, and Miller stared at him, making them uncomfortable. The transparent fruit is not bad, and the ghost fruit is not picky. As for the shadow fruit, it's okay. Looking at it, Miller couldn't help but smile, especially when he stared at Perona, his eyes were green. When he hadn't crossed before, Miller liked Perona very much, and she was naturally the object of obscenity. Now capable. Perona, be my woman. When he met a beautiful woman, Miller was a habitual opening remark. Robin shook his head and smiled bitterly. This guy just likes one. As for Khalifa's face is colorless, his pupils are also gray, like a zombie. Miller doesn't care anyway, his idea is very simple, lousy, just get yours. As for the heart. Get it if you can get it, forget it if you don't, he doesn't care about it anyway, Miller is just a face control. Guru. Perona swallowed fiercely and spit, and Miller stared directly at her. She was very scared. Are you here, are you kidding me? I'm serious, I can meet us in both nights and flights in my dreams before. Miller said solemnly. I do everything from beginning to end, and I will never give up on what I believe. You can't run away. Don't get too smug. Before Perona could answer, Gecko Moria's extremely angry roar resounded throughout the castle. The boss of Thriller Bark was him, and this guy ignored him as soon as he came, and even dug the foot of the wall in front of him. How arrogant, you can't be so unscrupulous, right? Oh, I'm so sorry. Miller touched his head, then turned his gaze to Moria, and smiled embarrassingly. Look at my memory, picking up girls is just a sideline, but I have something to do, so please wait in line to punch me. I reject. Moria sneered. On the ocean, who doesn't know what this guy is? Copy the ability everywhere. No one wants their abilities to be copied. Are there things you can refuse if you can refuse? Miller's eyes were slightly ominous, and his tone was full of playfulness. Hearing that, Moria was not afraid. Immediately get lousy out of the Thriller Bark. This is lousy's territory, and it is not your turn to be an outsider to clamor. As expected of Moria-sama, the three weirdos all have a look of admiration. This is their boss Gecko Moria, who deserves to be the man who has fought the 4 emperors. But Miller volleyed, and a golden heat wave rushed towards him, kick at the speed of light. The speed of the beam was too fast, and it swallowed Gecko Moria in an instant. Rumble. This guy's bloated figure was not easy to move, and he was hit by the flash of light. The whole body exploded, and the violent shockwave directly blasted Gecko Moria. The 3 weirdos under him were also shaken back. Is Lousy here to hear your refusal? Fool. Miller sneered and walked towards Gecko Moria step by step. Guru. Miller passed in front of the 3 monsters, and they didn't have the courage to punch their hands at all. This is the ability of that guy Kizaru. Moria's fat body stood up tremblingly, his head was severely burnt, and a 42-yard footprint was clearly imprinted on his head. It hurts. Moria rubbed her head, her eyes scarlet. He crossed his hands, and a large group of black bats flew out of his body, flying bats. Squeak. Hundreds of bats opened their fangs and sharp mouths. They were all transformed by Moria's shadow, and they were extremely ferocious. Miller didn't fight back either, he opened his arms openly, waiting for the bite. Strangely, these bats did not attack either in the past 10 or 20 seconds. Miller frowned and looked at Moria, the black shadow bat had dispersed. HMPH. I want to copy this uncle's shadow fruit. How can you succeed? Moria gave up the attack, and a cruel curve swept across the corner of his mouth. Lousy wants to defuse them. Moria waved a big hand, and the sky full of bats bite towards Robin and Khalifa. This guy. Both Robin and Khalifa were shocked. F*K, you F*King, Miller provokes you, let's get angry with them. Coward. Dark Water. Miller activated Dark Fruit's ability for the first time, and his gravitational force surged, and the bat group was forcibly pulled over before the 2 of them were close. Boom. Miller released a high-density lightning, blowing all the bats into pieces. He was gloomy and stared at Moria with piercing eyes. Not to mention, this guy has really found his weakness. Robin and others are indeed his inferior scales. But it was this behavior that angered Miller. It's just that you don't have any subordinates, right? Miller's other hand also erupted in darkness, and gravity rushed out again and fell on someone. Master Moria, please help me. Hakubak panicked for help. Under the control of gravity, he could not stabilize his body at all and was forcibly dragged over. Puff. Hogback fell heavily in front of Miller, his bones falling apart. Hogback didn't have the slightest fighting power, he was just a doctor, and he was almost killed on the spot. Heaven Kongyun Jian. Miller condensed a large laser sword and slashed it angrily at Hakubak. Gecko Moria was anxious, and he also counted on Hakubak to help transform the zombie army. Shadow Barrier. Moria burst out and Hogback was immediately covered by a black barrier. Pouch. The black residue flew away, the shadow barrier was vulnerable, and Miller slashed it in half. A shocking stab wound also appeared on Hogback's back. Hakubak roared, and blood spewed out like a fountain. The anger in Moria's heart was erupting like a volcano, and at this moment all of her reason and everything were thrown out of the sky. A black spear sprang out from his body. After aiming at Miller, Moria said bitterly, "Shadowhorn spear." The black spear more than 10 meters long shoots out like an arrow, and it is also condensed by his shadow. Boom. Miller did not evade. The spear hit his head, the powerful force smashed the wall, and the whole person was blasted out of the castle. This guy is really strong, like an iron bump. Moria clenched his fists. What he wanted to see was to penetrate Miller. It's so ruthless, just hit the head. Miller was lying on the ground. He rubbed his eyebrows, painful, but. Shadow fruit ability Gecko Moria has been captured. Now copy, 1%, 50%, 100%. Copy is completed. Congratulations to the host for getting the shadow fruit. The corner of Miller's mouth curled up, and he successfully copied the shadow fruit. Even if he was beaten up, he was satisfied. Return it all to you. Miller's shadow also condensed into a black spear, piercing out with all his strength, Shadowhorn spear. Master Moria, not only Miller, we were also attacked by Thor Enel. In the castle, someone came to report soon, with a panic on his face. Why? I want to kill them all. Gecko Moria was full of grim expressions. It just happens that the uncle doesn't have the shadow of the strong, so give their shadows. Boom. Before Moria could finish speaking, the walls of the castle were poked open. He quickly turned around and saw that it was stabbed by a huge black spear. Moria was stunned. He just used this thorn to fly Miller. Why did the retribution come so quickly? Shadow barrier. Moria used the shadow barrier again, a barrier as thick as a steel plate in front of her. Pouch. The black shadow barrier was blasted off immediately, and its surface was penetrated by a huge hole, and the broken barrier slammed into Moria with the shadow horn spear. Moria's screams echoed throughout the castle, making countless zombies' scalps numb. A blood hole was also drilled in Moria's belly, and blood mixed with rotten flesh spurted out of the wound. Nearly half a meter of the tip of the spear pierced Moria's body. With Miller's style, he would be a little bit close when he met the strong, but Moria was different. He did what Miller did annoyingly. Master Moria. Both Absalom and Perona spoke out in horror. Moria's mouth was also vomiting blood. He didn't care about the pain all over his body, clenched his fist and smashed the black spear in his stomach. Boom. The dull sound spread, and the spear didn't respond at all. Unexpectedly. Moria was both painful and shocked, and he undoubtedly knew his tricks best. It stands to reason. It is normal for this fist to interrupt, but there is nothing at all at the moment. Could it be that this guy surpassed me just as soon as he got the fruit of shadow? Blue veins appeared in Moria's forehead. It's not that I surpassed you, but other hardware surpassed you. The lightning condensed, and Miller walked out of it. He incorporated Kazaru's copy of Armament Hockey into the shadow gun, and its power and quality naturally surpassed Moria. It was just this blow that almost killed the Shichibukai Moria in seconds. Fart. Moria screamed sharply, still unacceptable. Miller followed Moria's previous tricks, dividing his shadow into countless bats, flying bats. A large number of bats with fangs and sharp beaks surrounded Moria, biting him, puff puff puff. Moria's body showed more and more wounds, and his body was bleeding. The clothes all over his body were soaked with blood. Master Moria. Absalom and Perona were so frightened that they couldn't stand still. In their impression, Moria was the kind of invincible character. It's all right now, being crushed like a chicken in front of Miller. Go away. Moria waved his arms to drive away the bats, and there was a spear stuck in his body. He couldn't deal with these bats because of pain. You seem to like other people's shadows very much, don't you? A faint voice sounded, and Moria quickly turned her head to see that Miller seemed to be transformed into magic, gently grasping her own shadow. As a shadow fruit ability person, not only can he control his own shadow, but he can also cut out the shadows of others. Moria stared blankly. He probably never thought that one day, his own shadow would be cut away. Pouch. Miller slashed with a knife, and Moria and his shadow suddenly separated. I can no longer reflect my own shadow under my feet. You damn guy. Moria roared again and again, and his anger made smoke. Only he cut the shadow of others. Now Miller, the guy who copied his own fruit, cut away the shadow. His face was crackling. In extreme anger, he didn't know where his strength was, and he smashed the spear stuck in his chest with a bang, and his big fat hand patted Miller. A flash of light popped out from Miller's fingers, laser. Pouch. The light was like a bullet, and Moria's fist was suddenly opened. There was endless pain on Moria's face again, and her fist was retracted in reflex. And taking advantage of this opportunity, Miller appeared in front of Absalom, and he glanced at Perona lightly, the latter's face pale in terror. Puff. Their knees softened, and both fell to their knees. I will not embarrass you, provided that you do things for me obediently. Miller shook the black shadow in his hand and whispered, put Moria's shadow into the body of the demon Oz, do you understand? What? Absalom froze for a moment. He didn't expect Miller to have such a weird idea. Isn't this guy worried that he has no strong soul? Isn't he Shichibukai himself? Miller turned his head and glanced at Moria, sneered. On lousy sight, don't be too presumptuous. Gecko Moria was furious again and again after hearing the words. He stood up tremblingly, regardless of his battered body, shadows gathered together. With this sound, as if the prelude to destruction was played, countless zombies on the thriller bark fell to the ground, all the shadows in their bodies were drawn out, and they went to one person Gecko Moria. Wow. Moria opened his mouth, as if eating, swallowing all the shadows. However, within 10 seconds, his body swelled extremely. He was originally cm tall, but after absorbing more and more shadows, his body grew bigger and bigger, 9 meters, 12 meters, 15 meters, 20 meters. Until the end, he reached a height of nearly 40 meters. He. The harsh laughter resounded throughout the world, and Moria waved his arms excitedly. I see it. This is the shadow of 1,000 people. This uncle is equivalent to having the fighting power of those 1,000 people. What do you use to defeat Lousy? Moria looked down at Miller condescendingly, but at this time, thunder and lightning gathered above his head, illuminating the sky. Raiden? Moria's expression freezes, and there is indeed a fellow with thunder fruit ability in the Miller Pirates. Thor Enel, a newcomer who has recently emerged on the sea, is offering a reward of 500 million Baileys. Thinking of this, Moria had a gloomy face, and his reward was only 320 million. What Moria didn't know was that it was not Enel who summoned thunder this time. It's Miller. God's sanction. A dazzling beam of thunder and lightning shone on Moria's body. His body was too big to avoid the attack of thunder and lightning. Rumble. A large group of thunder and lightning leaned down, and the terrifying thunder and lightning exploded directly on Moria. His body tens of meters high was swallowed by the thunder and lightning. Moria screamed again. Even if her body became bigger and her strength improved, she stomped her feet and the entire thriller bark would tremble. However, the defense was still very poor, and the whole body was burned with thick smoke. After the lightning strike, the feeling of numbness swept all over the body, and the feeling of powerlessness surged into my heart. Let alone fighting, it is extremely difficult to move at this moment. Oops. Moria yelled badly. His legs became unstable, and the shadows in his body began to roll over, like a shark, constantly hitting his belly. Vomiting. With discomfort in his lungs, Moria gagged uncontrollably, and he quickly covered his mouth. For fear of spitting out the shadow, these are all his precious combat power. Idiot. There is no capital to control such power at all, it's just an empty and powerful trash. Miller sneered when she saw it. From the point of view of her size, Moria was strengthened, but it was actually not as good as before. Rumble. At this moment, Moria's castle suddenly collapsed, and a huge monster shattered the entire castle, standing tall in the world. From a distance, he was actually much taller than the huge Moria. This giant looks weird, with horns on his head, a hideous face, and large patches of stitches on his body. It is not difficult to see that it is also a member of the Moria zombie group. Ooh. Oz. Perona covered her small mouth in surprise. Asshole. After seeing Oz's resurrection, Moria became even more angry, because her shadow was implanted in it. It's simply outrageous. At the same time, there are many Marlins in another corner of the World Naval Headquarters. No matter whether Shichibukai entered the war or refused, he at least responded to us, except for Moria who said nothing. The warship we sent over is also lost. Shouldn't it be sunk by that crazy man? These Shichibukai are getting more and more presumptuous one by one. At the Naval Headquarters meeting, Marine executives discussed a lot. People like Don Quixote Doflamingo and others all responded clearly, saying that they would respond to Marine's call. There are people like Jinbei who refuse to deal with Whitebeard. There are people like Boa Hancock who claim to consider it. Go over and let me know. Sengoku narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, Shichibukai who refuses to join the war will be deprived of the title. If Moria doesn't come, HMPH, he will go to Impel Down and Jinbei for company. Jinbei made it clear that he was not interested in dealing with the Whitebeard pirates, and even opposed Marine's plan to execute Fire Fist Ace. In this case, Marine didn't need to pay attention to emotions, and directly threw Jinbei to impel down. Agree. The rest of Marine also agreed with Sengoku's plan. The disobedient Shichibukai is not required by the government or Marine. 10 minutes later, the meeting was over. A special character came to Sengoku's office. This man is a burly figure and wears a hat. There are many bear prints on his clothes or hat. He came to Sengoku's office with a handful of books in his hand and said nothing. Unlike ordinary pirates, he was a very quiet man. Bartholomew Kuma, a man nicknamed Baokun. Bear, I have a task for you. Sengoku looked up at the bear. The latter remained silent, and Sengoku didn't care. The bear was like this. You go to the Thriller Bark right away, with your ability. We'll be there soon, right? Sengoku asked that the bear is a paramecia fleshball fruit-capable person. After the fruit can compress the surrounding air and surround the whole body, it can make a spatial transfer. I'm very busy. Let's make a long story short. Shang responded indifferently, and immediately began to flip through the books. You go and tell Gecko Moria roll over immediately to join Marine's plan to deal with the Whitebeard pirates. What if he refuses? Reject. Sengoku's eyes flashed coldly. The famous pirate in the sea is not bad for him. I understand. Shang Wenyan immediately closed the book, an air mass covered him, and disappeared with a bang. If Moria knew, he must have been wronged. He hadn't received notice from Marine at all. Because it informed Moria that the warship was sunk by Enel. The bear has acted, and with his fruitful ability, it will not take long to land on the Thriller Bark. Sengoku and other Marines didn't even know that Moria was attacked by Miller. At this moment, in the deepest part of the Devil's Sea, the usually silent sea is shaking constantly. The two behemoths fought on the Thriller Bark. The fight spread to the entire ship, and even the nearby waters were affected, and the waves rolled. All castles and other buildings on the ship were destroyed. The huge battle between Moria and the Demon Oz has also reached a white-hot stage. Boom. The fists of the two collided together, and the scattered power fluctuations made the entire Thriller Bark tremble. It hurts lousy. Moria clutched her fist, and the power of the Demon Oz was no worse than him. He grinned with pain, but Oz, the devil, didn't feel the pain at all. Flying bats. Moria burst out, and thousands of shadows flew out of her body again. The scale was even more exaggerated than before. Flying bats. The Demon Oz used the same method and also summoned a swarm of bats that covered the sky. Bats with sharp teeth and sharp mouths bit each other. Moria feels bitter. The Demon Oz is a cold corpse, but he is different. On his fat body, there are at least 100 bite wounds, painful to die to live. The most embarrassing thing is that this is the damage left by his own shadow. The Demon Oz originally planned to deal with Kaido, but in the end he fell on his own head. Is there anything more tragic than this in the world? The duplicator Miller. Moria screamed like crazy to vent her resentment. Shadowblade. Moria's palm sprayed a thick black liquid, and according to his will, it condensed into a jagged knife. With a forceful flick of his arm, the extremely dangerous Shadowblade swept the Demon Oz's head. Boom. There was a loud noise, the sky trembled, and the black Shadowblade stopped before it hit the Demon Oz. A barrier like a shield blocked Moria's attack. What kind of ability is this? Moria exclaimed, slashing forward, and the emerald-colored barrier did not show a trace of damage. Shadowblade. The Demon Oz made the same ultimate move as Moria, holding the sawtooth Shadowblade in his hand and swept it out, and the blade rushed towards Moria. His heartbeat accelerated, and he felt the shadow of death at this moment, and he swung his knife to greet him. Demon Oz smiled slyly, his mouth suddenly opened, and a ray of light spurted out, laser. Pouch. The speed of the light was too fast, and the instant it shot penetrated Moria's thick palm. The shadow blade in his hand couldn't be grasped immediately, and he threw it to the ground with a bang. Damn it. The shadow blade held by the Demon Oz also approached, and the serrated blade easily penetrated Moria's arm, and blood was spilled into the sky like a torrential rain. A bloody arm fell to the ground. The famous 7 warlords of the sea had his arm cut off. Wow. Moria wailed loudly. Her voice was a little hoarse. He didn't know how many times this was today. He is not an opponent at all against Miller, who has a variety of devil fruit abilities. Lousy fight with you. Moria strode forward with her huge body. Miller, who was immersed in the Demon Oz, shook his head. Moria's mentality had collapsed. At this time, normal people were kneeling and begging for mercy. His mind moved slightly, and the big hand of the demon Oz suddenly raised, and a touch of wind and sand condensed in his palm. Desert storm. Miller controlled the demon Oz and threw out the spinning sandstorm in his hand. This is Crocodile's sand fruit. Well, it was also a hapless guy who was killed by him. The sandstorm broke out and expanded dozens of times, and Moria's more than 40-meter-high body was immediately covered. Moria's eyes were red when he went crazy, and he rushed up directly with brute force. Puff. 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 Only the slightest touch of the sandstorm caused his body to be crushed, his 2 thighs were cut off most of the flesh and blood, and his leg bones were exposed. Puff. Moria, who had suffered severe damage, couldn't hold on anymore, and her huge body finally fell down. He opened his mouth, all the shadows in his body flew out, and Moria's body gradually shriveled. You are not allowed to run, you are all my strength, no one is allowed to run. Moria's only remaining arm grabbed the shadows, even if it was about to fail, he was still full of infinite enthusiasm for power. In fact, Moria's idea is not wrong. In this sea, people who lack strength can easily be bullied. Only those who have truly experienced hardship and pain can understand the importance of strength. Moria's vision became increasingly blurred, and the world he saw with both eyes had double images. He was dizzy due to excessive blood loss. He glanced at Oz unwillingly, and then fainted. 7 warlords of the sea gecko Moria, defeated. Even if Moria fainted, Miller didn't let him off. He intends to use dark fruit to transfer the shadow fruit to other people. This guy is dead. With Moria's defeat, the thriller bark was temporarily included in Miller's rule. Including Moria's 2 subordinates Absalom and Perona, all bowed their heads to Miller. They witnessed Miller's horror firsthand, and they would die if they disobeyed. Anyone who wants to survive will bow to Miller. Miller had no intention of letting go of Perona's ghost fruit and Absalom's transparent fruit. Inside the cabin of the Ark Proverbs, Perona sat down opposite Miller very nervously, clutching the corners of her dress tightly, dripping sweat on her forehead, and all her makeup was spent. Am I, Lord Miller? You let me hit you. Perona stared at Miller incomprehensibly, feeling a little speechless. Would she dare to fight? Of course I dare not. Yes, only if you hit me can I copy the ghost fruit. Come on. You're welcome, give me a punch right away. Miller pointed to his forehead and said, I'm a little afraid. Perona lowered his head. What if this guy settles after the fall? What's not dare to do? So far, every ability you have seen has been gained after being attacked by others. Don't worry, I am immortal. Miller said triumphantly. However, Perona kept her head down, facing a big pirate like Miller, she had no temper at all. Sorry to start? Should we change place? Miller's mouth suddenly showed a mean smile, and he turned around and pointed his astrum at Perona, leaning high. Come, I'll give you a green light, you can go here, you're the only one, don't tell anyone. Please don't make such silly jokes. Perona's face flushed and was extremely embarrassed. She has never seen a person like Miller. She is so frantic. Is there any shame? In desperation, Perona finally gave Miller a punch, a very light punch, to his shoulder. The ghost fruit ability Perona has been captured, and now it is copied, 1%, 50%, 100%, and the ghost fruit has been copied. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Paramecia ghost fruit. The voice of the system rang in his mind, and Miller's face showed a faint smile. Absalom, come in. Miller looked at the cabin door and said. Creak. Before long, the door of the cabin was opened and Absalom entered. Pun me. He looked at Absalom and said, but apparently would not ask him to fight on the ass. Really? Absalom was also extremely frightened. It was disrespectful for the younger brother to beat the boss, not to mention that they were still prisoners of war. Stop talking nonsense. Do you want to die? Miller let out a murderous look and stared, and Absalom was so frightened that he was about to pee his pants. He quickly came up and gave Miller a soft punch. It's him, haven't you eaten? With such a small amount of strength, the system hasn't detected it. Miller yelled. Absalom's fist was too light, not as good as Perona, and the system didn't detect it. Perona was a little bit dumbfounded at this scene, and his attitude towards herself was obviously the opposite of that of Absalom. Boom. Absalom punched Miller again, knocking him a step back. Absalom, who is capable of transparent fruit, has been tested. The sound of the system rang in his mind again, and Miller successfully copied the transparent fruit again. After defeating Moria, the shadow he had taken was released by Miller. Some people were very grateful to Miller and directly joined his pirate group. Miller also readily accepted this, and he even released Brooke's shadow, which was extremely grateful. Miller had only one request and asked Brooke to give himself a knife. Although this guy was a little confused, he still agreed. His yellow spring fruit has also been copied. After solving all the trivial matters, Miller and his gang opened the party directly on the ruins and gained a few good abilities. He was in a good mood. Especially the transparent fruit, it will be easier to watch Robin and the others take a bath in the future. At the same time, in the outer area of Thriller Bark, a huge figure descended in the darkness. His gaze spread away, looking at the ruins all over the ground and the broken walls piled up in the distance. The old-fashioned face was a little loose. Someone attacked Moria. This person from afar is the Bao Kun, bear from one of the 7 warlords of the sea. After he stepped into the Thriller Bark, he immediately found traces of the battle. Anyway, Moria is also a powerful pirate in the sea. He is really curious about who dares to break the ground on Tai Sui. The bear strode forward and began to sneak into the core area of the Thriller Bark. The bear approached silently, and the condition of Thriller Bark is currently unclear. He did not dare to reveal his whereabouts. On Miller's side, the Ark Proverbs was docked on the ruins, and the group was drunk after celebrating, and everyone fell asleep underground. The same is true for Miller. He has the worst alcohol, and he is unconscious after a few drinks. Taking advantage of the drunken relationship, Miller successfully won Perona. It's rare to be quiet. Robin sat lazily on the ruins, holding a goblet in his hand, and there was still red wine in it. She squinted her eyes, enjoying the comfortable evening breeze. The life of Miller pirates is simple and plain. Every day she reads books, takes a walk, eats some delicious food when she is bored, and when she arrives on a certain island, she can experience the local customs and drink coffee by the way. Life now is as easy as traveling, which was not what Robin dared to imagine before. Of course, during the day, it is inevitable to suffer Miller's salty pig hand. In fact, it's not just Robin, every woman on the Miller ship spent this way. The next stop should be Saboti Archipelago. Robin's face showed a look of anticipation. According to the original plan, the Miller pirates would dive underground from Saboti to the Fishmen Island, where there was also a piece of historical text that recorded the ancient weapon Poseidon-related matters. In fact, with the ability of the Ark's Proverbs, there is no need to dive to the Fishmen Island. You can directly jump over the red line and rush to New World. Robin asked to go to the Fishmen Island, and Miller simply agreed. It is worth mentioning that after going to Saboti Archipelago, he will not rush to the Fishmen Island immediately. There are other plans. The last time Robin formed a bridge with the world government in the capital of 7 Waters, Robin was almost kidnapped by CP9. Since then, Miller has hated the world government. I will surely upset Saboti Archipelago to relieve you. Robin's face appeared to have a seeming arc, which was Miller's promise to her a few days ago. After many days of observation, Robin has a clear understanding of Miller. Although he is a pirate, he has no ambitions, has never killed innocents, and has no interest in treasures. The only thing that deserves criticism is the woman's side. I like one when I see one. All in all, Miller gave Robin the feeling that although he is a pirate, he is not bad in nature, and is completely different from those who are extremely vicious and murderous. It's really laid-back Nico Robin. At this moment, an indifferent voice sounded behind him. Robin looked back subconsciously, and a man with a large figure appeared. Robin's eyes were suddenly filled with consternation, but the next moment he recovered his tranquility. 7 warlords of the sea, Bartholomew Kuma. Robin recognized this strong man. If she had been in the past, she might have been worried to death, because among Shichibukai, the most obedient to the government is the one in front of her. Now. Robin shook the goblet in his hand and said softly, Miller is asleep. You should leave as soon as possible, otherwise the government will lose another Shichibukai. Crocodile and Gecko Moria were killed one after another. Again. Shang looked down at Robin and said in a deep voice, it seems that Moria has also been defeated. It's amazing, I didn't expect that it was Miller who landed here. Shang stared at the Ark's Proverbs and the large swaths of pirates on the island. The strength of the enemy and ours is very different, and there is really no chance of winning. Hey. You think the uncle did not feel your presence, Stinky Bear? An unruly voice sounded, and the night sky was suddenly illuminated. A large beam of lightning bolts locked on the bear's head. God's sanction. A waterfall of lightning fell from the sky, and the big bear's fleshy hands were raised high. Boo. After the lightning engulfed the bear, it did not explode. His big hand looked like a black hole, quickly absorbing the lightning from his body and expelling it from his body. With a light flick of his finger, the thunder and lightning flew with a bang, and flew into the sky again. What is this ability? Enel looked a little confused, his own lightning was actually bounced off. Idiot. This is Paramecia's meatball fruit. It's an outstanding ability. Don't know when it started. Miller also walked out of the cabin. He looked at Robin bitterly. You didn't tell me. Oh, didn't you come out on your own? If I act rashly, he will do you a loss if he kills me? Robin smiled slightly and replied with a clever tongue. Wait, I'm packing you up. Miller glared at Robin, then looked at the bear condescendingly. It seems a little difficult to take away your abilities. The bear can travel through space, and if this guy avoids fighting, Miller is no different. He can go to any corner of the world as he wants. Meatball fruit's slap flying is not only aimed at the enemy, but also at himself. Then say goodbye. Shang turned and left, leaving everyone behind. What are you worried about? Miller's electric current filled, and flashed in front of the bear with a snap. It's hard to get it right. If I let you go without trying it, wouldn't I lose face? Miller spread out his 5 fingers, and the two people swept out huge barriers in the 4 directions of the south, east, west, and northwest. The bear looked up at the sky, and the top of his head was also covered by a barrier. Wow. It's a big area, you deserve to be the boss. In order to prevent the bears from using the space to move and run, Miller directly used the barrier fruit to seal the entire space. The area is extremely exaggerated, and the height of the barrier is about 50 meters. The original version of Bartolomeo couldn't stretch out such a large area. Hey. Let me in, this guy is my prey. Enel knocked on the barrier unhurtedly, and even the electric discharge attacked the barrier, which was of no use at all. You don't think this stupid way can restrict me? Shang dismissed it. It's indeed a stupid method, but it is also the most effective method I can think of. If you can still move in space after blocking the entire space, then I will give up. Miller is very Buddhist. Although the meatball fruit is good, it is not necessary. Keep your eyes open. The big bear's fleshy slap gently hooked, and the flowing air was drawn by him like a stream, and quickly condensed in his palm. Within a single thought, the massive air was compressed by the bear into a palm-shaped air cube. If it is released outside, it is a powerful and domineering air cannon. If you cover yourself, then you can make a space transfer. Once transferred, the bear is in the thriller bark at the moment, and in the next second, he may appear in Sabodi Archipelago, or Naval Headquarters, or even the Holy Land Marie Joys and other places. It sounds like a fantasy, but in fact it is like this. During the first battle of Sabodi Archipelago, the bear used his own ability to send Straw Hat crew to all parts of the world. Why don't you King dare to shoot me flying? I beg you to shoot me to impel down. Miller looked at the air cube in the bear's hand eagerly. If I travel, I want to go to my daughter's country. It would be nice to send me a ride. Lousy promises not to resist. If you help, I can help your revolutionary army to overthrow the world government. The bear ignored Miller's request and was covered by his compressed air cube. The guy raised his hand and said goodbye, see you next time. Boom. In the next moment, the bear's figure disappeared completely. Miller was aggrieved when he saw this. He released such a big barrier, but he wasted a lot of strength. Rumble. The huge barrier suddenly trembled. Miller was so angry that it was Enel who did it again. He looked at him angrily. You kid, give me peace, or I'll give you. What? He stood motionless and did nothing. Could it be? Miller observation hockey unfolded and looked deep into the sky, his pupils instantly frozen. The bear's body hit the barrier heavily, causing the entire barrier space to shake. Failed. After Miller was startled, his eyebrows were beaming. The bear didn't rush out of this space, and the guy was controlled. How can it be? Shang was also startled. His body hit the barrier, and his bones were almost broken. This influential thing really locked him. It's ridiculous. Miller couldn't wait to open his slap, and the surface of his skin was covered by a thick black mist, dark water. Gravity filled the world, as if being held by an invisible big hand. The bear immediately flew towards where Miller was. He subconsciously stretched out his hand to fight back, but gave up as soon as the air was compressed. After punching him, maybe the next moment, this guy will use his ability to fight back. Boom. A dark shadow fell heavily, and the dust from the ground was splashed. The bear fell into the pit. His clothes were worn out, part of his body was exposed to the air, and the entire right shoulder was made of steel. Because of the heavy fall, the iron armor on this guy's body was deformed. Under Miller's gaze, Shang slowly got up. This guy was like a meat shield. The sky tens of meters high was pulled down by gravity. The bear seemed to be fine. It seems that if you want to leave, you can only break these barriers, Shang muttered to himself. The big hands spread out, and the air is compressed into a bear's paw again. The breath is as big as the head, and it looks more powerful, bear impact. The condensed air flew towards the barrier quickly. A golden figure burst out in an instant, blocking the bear's attack with his body. Rumble. The overbearing shockwave dispersed in all directions, and the entire barrier space was shaking violently. Under the bear's full output, the gap in the barrier connection was blasted out of the cracks. He took advantage of this gap and flew out. As for Miller himself, he lay on the ground. Just now he used his body to block the bear's attack. 10 seconds later, Miller got up. He patted the dust on his body, his eyes spread out. The bear has disappeared. Never mind. Miller moved his shoulders, a satisfied smile on his face. Congratulations, host, Paramisha meatball fruit has been copied. In my mind, the voice of the system came. Boss, did you succeed? Bartolomeo rushed in along the gap in the barrier. The defense of the barrier fruit is unquestionable, but it was rushed away by the bear abruptly, enough to see the strength of the bear guy. This taciturn man is definitely one of the most underrated Shichibukai. Why? Do you want to experience it? Miller asked jokingly. No, no. Bartolomeo shook his head quickly, and said with a flattering smile, I'm not here to congratulate you, long live the boss. But it's a shame. Miller sighed. The only flaw is that he still wants to transfer the bear fruit ability to his own person. The kid ran fast enough, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Naval headquarters have many Marlins. The news of Marine's public execution of Firefist Ace spread all over the world. Over the past few days, more and more Marine elites have flocked to naval headquarters. Looking ahead, warships continue to come from afar, and Marines from all over the world disembark one after another. Naval headquarters is also building various military fortresses. The enemy is the ferocious Whitebeard pirate group. Even if it takes advantage of the right time and place, Marine must be very careful. Whitebeard. But the strongest man in the world. Marshal Sengoku, Bartholomew Kuma is back. The guard ran over to report. Sengoku swept over, and the bear had already followed in. The bear was in ragged clothes, and the iron armor on his body was seriously deformed. I don't know, but I thought it was from where he had escaped. How did you make it like this? Sengoku asked, concentrating his eyes. Maria died in battle, and the one who did it was the copycat Miller. Shang made a long story short, and the words fell. Sengoku's office was deadly quiet. As that brat again. Sengoku gritted his teeth. Crocodile was killed by him, and now Gecko Moria was also killed by him. Is this guy going to get rid of all Shichibukai? No wonder you made it like this. Sengoku was relieved. He thought he was injured because of a fight with Moria. Now it seems. Bear, you are lucky. Crocodile and Gecko Moria were killed, but the bear came back alive. The Grand Line is on a small island called Roland. Boom rumble. Boom rumble. Boom rumble. Marine assembled several warships and carried out a carpet bombing of the island. Half an hour ago, someone reported that CP9 and a group of people had appeared on this island, and Marine immediately dispatched warships to encircle and suppress. Spandam pushed all the faults of Eni's lobby's destruction to CP9, and even slandered Khalifa for taking refuge in Miller, and 5 elders made Marine wanted for CP9 in a rage. CP9 and a group of people are hiding in an underground bunker. They are all yellow and thin, and everyone is very haggard. In the Battle of the City of Seven Waters, everyone was injured. Marine was chasing after him and they had no time to recover from their injuries. Enough of this kind of days. Jabra, who was lying underground, suddenly got up and roared, and the eyes of the others flickered. Yes, they are too frustrated. They have been hunted down for more than a week, and they have had enough hardships. How much respect the world government used to be, how hateful it is now. Who is the leader of Marine? Lu Chi asked hoarsely. That Guion Vice Admiral, Kaku said solemnly. Don't think that the other party is just a Vice Admiral, but the strength is much stronger than the average Vice Admiral. Try to break through. Lu Chi clenched his fist. The next stop is Sabodi Archipelago. Dive to the Fishmen Island and enter the New World. You can probably get rid of the government and Marine's pursuit. HMPH, I knew it would be better to join Khalifa and join the Miller Pirates. Jabra snorted coldly. If it were before, it is estimated that he would arouse everyone's attention. But at this moment, everyone was silent. The world government was so cruel and rushed to kill them, and their hearts were chilled. Maybe it was really wrong before. There are only two roads leading to New World. One is through the holy place Marie Joy's, and the other is through Saboti Archipelago to dive into the Fishmen Island. It is obviously impossible for the pirates to cross Marie Joy's. This also causes the pirates who want to rush to the New World to come to Saboti Archipelago, so there are a lot of pirates gathering here. Pirates from all over the world have gathered here, and pirates offering tens of millions of Baileys can be seen everywhere. There are also many pirates over 100 million supernova. It is worth mentioning that Miller has also been classified as a supernova. Don't look at the bounty so scary, he is actually a newcomer who hasn't been out for a long time. On the way to the Saboti Archipelago, several warships on the sea braved the wind and waves and set sail. In the sky, the Ark's proverbs followed. That guy changed my battleship into a paradise for one person, that's mine. On the deck, Enel looked at the spaceship in the sky, gnawing the apple depressedly. Miller was having fun on the spaceship, he was gnawing apples below, this F***K. Haha, Enel, if you want, Master Frankie can help you build a more advanced one. Frankie was holding a large bottle of Coke frantically. He held Enel's shoulder and shouted, "At that time, I will prepare a more convenient spaceship for you. Using Coke as fuel is much easier than electricity. You get out of the way, pervert." Enel kicked the pants man open. "You too. Pay attention, you will be rushing to Saboti Archipelago soon. The boss said that he will do a big vote, don't mess around here." Bartolomeo looked at the two of them very speechless. "What are you afraid of? The gods do it." Saboti Archipelago exploded to the ground in minutes. Enel straightened his chest. After all, this uncle is an omnipotent deputy captain. He used to think of stepping Miller under his feet and letting him be his little brother, but after getting along for a few days, he found that this goal seemed a little far away. "Well, let's set a small goal for now, the deputy captain will do." "What?" "It's okay not to say this." The moment it fell, Bartolomeo's stubborn temper suddenly came up, and his eyes were bigger than Bull's eyes. His head hit Enel's head directly. Boom. The two heads bumped together, and Enel was caught off guard and burst into tears in pain. "Bartolomeo, you bastard, be careful that God turns you into a grilled fish. You bastard who can only discharge, Master Miller didn't let you be the deputy captain. Who else is there besides this god? My uncle Bartolomeo is competent enough. Lousy is the first veteran to follow Lord Miller. You're just a bastard. That's better than you, a prisoner. Have you forgotten how Lord Miller cleaned you up on Sky Island?" The Ark in the sky opened a pleasant pool party, and Bartolomeo and others below were arguing non-stop. After Frankie joined the group, Miller asked him to remodel the Ark proverbs and expand a circle slightly. A swimming pool with a length of 20 meters and a width of about 10 meters was dug out on the deck. When there was nothing to do, Miller took a group of female tickets to hold a pool party. Drink a little wine, eat some delicious food, and watch the hot-bodied beauties in bikinis playing in the water. How leisurely such a day is. What kind of shit, One Piece? I don't know how everyone is doing. Everyone in the swimming pool was very happy to play. Only one person was sitting on the side, white jade-like feet fiddled with the splash boardly, and his pretty face was full of sorrow. "Yo, Khalifa, is there anything unhappy?" Miller chuckled and leaned in. Khalifa was wearing a golden bikini outfit with her fair skin today. Tisk tisk, the white Miller was a little dazzling. "Nothing." Khalifa only responded coldly. Her attitude towards Miller was no longer as indifferent as before. When he was forcibly taken away by Miller, Khalifa barely spoke to him. Although the attitude is very cold now, at least Miller's question has already begun to answer. Miller not only copied Moria's shadow fruit, but even used dark fruit to take away his abilities and transfer them to other people. And this person is Khalifa, and now she is a Paramecia shadow fruit ability. Also since then, Khalifa has changed a little bit about Miller. Although this guy looks unreliable at all, he really doesn't single out the problem with the women on the boat. Even if he wanted a gold mountain and a silver mountain, Miller would move in unceremoniously. Still worried about CP9. Miller saw the newspaper in Khalifa's hand, which reported the news about CP9 being hunted down. The government's espionage organization has become a traitor. It's really ridiculous to say it. Miller sighed. The CP9 of Khalifa's generation has worked for the world government for 10 or 20 years. What will happen to the end? Spandam flicked casually, and 5 elders wanted them. Are you still in touch with them? Miller asked suddenly. What do you want to do? Khalifa stared at Miller vigilantly, and at the same time patted Miller's outstretched pig hand. Cough. Miller looked embarrassed and coughed twice and said, CP9 is desperate right now. If they can't get along, join my pirate group. Real? Khalifa's beautiful eyes lit up, and she really had a phone worm contacting CP9. This can be fake or not, Lu Chi's potential is still good. Miller vaguely remembered that although Lu Chi lost to the Straw Hat Luffy, 2 years later, his strength has been further improved. Miller now has only one fierce man Enel.